5 years ago, fellowship churches across Canada leaned in very generously into our work in the Philippines. We knew that there was this need in the Philippines that we could only rescue as many children as there are aftercare homes for here in the Philippines. And that's why our aftercare leaders do such important work with our aftercare partners across the Philippines. So our Canadian church partners, the Fellowship of Evangelical Baptists, heard about this need and said, let's bless the church in the Philippines and let's enhance the capacity of IJM to rescue more children from the online sexual exploitation of children across the Philippines, specifically in the Cebu area. And what's really beautiful is over the course of this trip that we've been here, there have been a lot of beautiful moments, but we've seen some connection points between the funds that were sent 5 years ago and the impact that it's had today. You were at an aftercare shelter yesterday that was the recipient, the beneficiary of IJM's aftercare restoration funds. What was that experience like for you, actually getting to spend time with these little ones, these precious ones who were just rescued, many of them whose court cases are still being fought in court right now? What was that like for you?
Well, it was a mixture of emotions, quite frankly. I mean, it was one of the main reasons why I came on the trip. Our church has made a decision through the department that navigates these justice and relief and development projects is our fair department. And we decided this would be an area that we are going to work on, OSEC, online sexual exploitation of children. And in the Philippines, because it's such a strategic hotspot in this area in the world, if we can beat the scourge here, it's going to make a death blow across the globe. And so we thought strategically it makes sense to start in the Philippines, although we certainly have this problem in Canada. Then to see an actual aftercare program, that's what I wanted to come to see. And it was remarkable. 5 to 15-year-old girls, young women, there was a sense of confidence once again after terrible circumstances in which they could share their voice and feel empowered again. There was definitely a keen sense of community and love and acceptance and lots of warmth and hugs, and it was a safe place for them to express themselves. And so I was pretty overwhelmed by what I saw in the time with those young girls, and to see that some of them will become the voice for this issue in the Philippines in the not too distant future. I'm hopeful that it'll be their voices that will be overwhelming to so many people in the Philippines and then globally, that more and more governments will take this issue more seriously, and that we'll see more resources, because there's lots of scarcity in the resource area there, and see much more being done to end this scourge in the Philippines and around the world.
We were at this Canadian Embassy meeting with the Canadian Embassy, and in that meeting was an RCMP officer who is assigned to the Philippines specifically to fight the online sexual exploitation of children. It's a priority for the Canadian government, and in this meeting, the RCMP officer goes on to describe a recent case just a few months ago of a Canadian perpetrator who was abusing a child here in the Philippines. And he went on to describe how IJM assisted in this case and how this child was rescued. And then after they're rescued, they have to be restored. And that's why we have leaders like Dolly and Kuya Ted who help restore these children through the aftercare process. So quite beautifully, in a very divinely ordained way, this kid who was abused by a Canadian perpetrator was sent to an aftercare shelter that Kuya Ted, who was in the meeting, advocated for many years ago as a government leader. Got that built around 2008, and then that needed to be refurbished a few years ago. And again, in a beautiful, divinely ordained way, that aftercare shelter was refurbished with funds that came from fellowship churches through that appeal that FAIR did with IJM, and from your church specifically that gave a very generous chunk of that. And so for all of us to be together in that meeting, in that moment, and see the connection of all the dots was just a beautiful, divinely ordained thing. Well, let me close by just saying thank you. Thank you, fellowship churches, for leaning in so generously into our work here in the Philippines. And I hope you're encouraged by the impact that some of your leaders here have seen of your generosity. And I also want to use this opportunity to challenge the Canadian church. Look at what God has done here in the Philippines through fellowship churches and their generosity and their model in leading the way for the Canadian church to lean into this issue here in the Philippines. I hope you join the fellowship churches across Canada. I hope you join in with what God and the Spirit is doing across the world and here in the Philippines as well. So thank you, and we hope you continue to lean in with us here in the Philippines in the days to come.